Hi, I'm Terry Leverett, president of Prepare the Way. I'd like to introduce to you David Regnier of Armageddon Armory. He is an expert in arms, as he's going to teach on that, and he comes to it with a 30-year history of the Special Forces, and now with his Armory gun store. Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to talk about right off is to dispel a general belief in the body of Christ that you don't need firearms, you don't need to protect yourself or your neighbors. I'm going to tell you straight up, check out Joel 3rd and 4th chapter about the end days, check out Revelation, check out a bunch of places. It says that we're going to have to pound our pruning hooks and shears and plowshares back into weapons for the end days. And one of the things is not only for your personal defense, but here's the concept I wish you would get, if you get anything at all out of this, is the ability to protect the innocent. Think about that. If you have the ability to step forward between harm and the innocence around you, that is a calling, and that is something that you need to be praying about and preparing for, because in the end days, the disciples asked the Lord, right before he was taken back up, what would be the signs of his return? And he went through a lot of things that we obviously are seeing, but there's a statement that he made over and over and over that sticks out in the Holy Spirit, and it is, be prepared. You know, the Boy Scout model. A good translation will say, be prepared. Some translations just say, be watchful. Well, that's not a good translation of those words. It says, be prepared. And that's what I believe we're looking together as a corporate view of preparing the way for the end of days, as spoken of by Daniel, is that we need not only to feed ourselves, we need to actually look to the innocents around us. In my neighborhood, we happen to be some of the youngest people in our neighborhood. We're surrounded by people in their 80s and 90s, and we are prepared to feed and protect at least one block in a radius around us. That's a 4-block area. We are prepared to feed them, shelter them, and protect them in all the areas that they have. We have everything set aside for that. They can't do it. A lot of them don't have the resources to do it. None of them have the mindset to do it at this time in life. And so what I'm going to start off is if we could just agree that having some firearms, even if you don't have to use them, there's a term I want you to think about. It's called show of force. If society does have problems and your community services break down, such as your fire departments, your police departments, your food distribution networks, if those community resources break down, those services no longer are effective in your area, you're going to have people who are desperate, who are going to go looking for anything they can for resources. You're going to have everything from small groups of people to roving groups of large numbers, 15, 20 or more. And basically one of the concepts here is that if you don't have your neighbors organized and you're not out there standing there with a firearm in your neighborhood at the head of your block, they'll come right in. So what I'm trying to say is that if you have a show of force, if you appear to be ready and you have some preparations and ability to project power, they'll go to a softer target. They don't want to fight. They want to take. They want to steal what they can get easily. But as things get worse, you may run into groups that are more organized, that have firearms. But the bottom line is if you have some firearms and you can stand out there and show at least act like you know what you're doing, they're going to go around you. And so what I want to talk about first is I'm going to change up a few of my directions here, is that most people are concerned primarily with what they can do in their home. What's the first thing you can do in your home to protect it? Well, I advise everyone that the very best thing that you can do in a home situation is to have a shotgun. Not a single barrel, not an over-under, not a side-by-side, and not an autoloader. A pump shotgun. One where you provide the mechanical energy to operate it. This is a Mossberg. This is a 20 gauge. It is a pump shotgun. The shells load through the bottom here into this magazine tube. As you actuate the firearm, you pump it to load another round. And the reason I'd like you to have this is because they may not claim to understand English, but they understand what that means. Yeah, it's a universal language right there. It's safe. It's short, it's easily maneuverable in a hallway, it's inexpensive, highly effective, and here's something that most people do not think about. This does not over-penetrate. You want to take the person out in your hallway, and you do not wish your projectiles to go through that person, through walls, through the rest of your family, or into your neighbor's house, which you can with some of these Centerfire high-powered firearms. Your penetration factor has to be addressed inside the home defense. So shot shells slow down very rapidly. They're not very fast moving. They generally won't go through a wall. So you got to think about that. You want your force to stay where it's aimed at. And you don't have to be a very good shot with this. You can just point it. Now I would suggest that for most of you folks, for home defense, that you have either a 20 or a 12 gauge pump shotgun. Now, if you really want to do well and you want the whole family to use it, get it with a T6 stock on it. A T6 stock means that it is a 6-position collapsible stock. I probably don't have one here with me, but what it would be a stock that would come out and there's a button on it and you could shorten it by 6 different positions so that the length of pole could be right for a child, a woman, or you could push it all the way in if you needed it in a hallway. A collapsible T6 stock. Shot shells, double-aught buckshot inside the house. Ask for low recoil. Police loads, sometimes they're called. Police have the same problem when they apply force. Many times they have over-penetration. So there are special shells built for up-close encounters, which house encounters are, that have less powder in them so that the penetration is not as great. So you want to look for a low recoil or a police load. Okay, don't go for slugs. They go through walls. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. And the next thing about a home defense situation is that it may be possible due to age or physical ability that people can't wield a shotgun. You know, it takes a bit of strength, but what I also suggest is a bedside gun. And I suggest a revolver. Okay. So we're going to go for your 2 basic things. 1, 2, this is a revolver. Not a pistol, a revolver. The difference is a pistol is where the ammunition loads into the barrel. A revolver, the ammunition is in a cylinder. That's the differences between those 2 definitions. Basically, they're both a handgun, can be wielded with one hand. And I suggest a revolver for several reasons, and I'm going to get into it right now, but I'm going to put up here a revolver capable of shooting .357 Magnum and .38 Special. Okay, a .357 Magnum cylinder can accept .38 Special rounds. And the reason I'm saying this is because you want to have, this is not for personal carry. This is for the bedside. This stays in the house. You want to have a steel, made out of steel, and you want it to be heavy on purpose, because this is the firearm you're going to practice with. And the heavier it is, the less perceived recoil impact upon your wrist and body is going to be. The heavier it is, it absorbs more perceived recoil. You want to be able to go out and plink and shoot with this. And the reason I suggest this is because if you get it at .357 Magnum, you can get shot shells for .357 Magnum. Shot shells. Be real nice for inside the house. If you needed to have something with more penetration, you could have .357 Magnum ammunition. But the reason I'm saying this, so you can get the shot shells, and it's heavier. Generally, when you have a .357 Magnum, the frame is heavier. Then you can shoot .38 Specials, and there's where you want to be. This is the most widely produced revolver ammunition in the world. There is a massive, wide variety of loads, and you can get real low weight, low recoil loads to practice with, and you can get very powerful loads for anti-personnel. Now, on this revolver, I wanted to show you, there's not much to remember. If you're in an adrenaline situation, and it's night and the noises are going on and you've got your bedside gun, you do not want a semi-automatic. You want a revolver. You want to be able to pick it up, point it, and pull the trigger. Nothing to remember. You point it and you pull the trigger. 97% of all interpersonal shootings take place at 10 feet or less. Out of that, 94% within that take place at 7 feet or less. You don't need fancy adjustable sights. You don't need all kinds of stuff. You need to point your finger right at it and pull the trigger. You can also articulate this particular one as a double action. You may pull the hammer back with your thumb, which makes the trigger release much smoother and easier. There's no safeties. This is probably the safest firearm in the world, even though it doesn't have a mechanical safety, because it does have a long, hard trigger pull. You can't make it go off by snagging the trigger. It does have a crossbar safety that I won't take a long time to explain, but believe me, this has been around a long time. It is safe. It's effective. You don't have to think about it. If you have a semi-automatic such as this, and by the way, this is probably the finest semi-automatic firearm in the world today, you have to think, is it loaded? Because you can't see the bullets. Then you have to think, oh, is there one in the chamber? Then you have to think, oh, is the safety on? Oh, am I gripping it right? This has a grip safety. There's all kinds of stuff in here. Is it cocked? You can't tell if it's cocked. This, you just pull the trigger. This is called double action. And a lot of you have heard the term double action, single action. I just want to go quickly over that. Double action means that the trigger does two things. It just cocked it, and then it released it. If it was a single action, you would have to manually cock it with your thumb, and then the trigger would only do one mechanical function, which is release the hammer. That's the difference between single action and double action. You want a double action. Let's go put that up since I'm not going to assume you know much about this. You want what's called a DAO. And at the gun store, they're going to know what you're talking about, and you're going to sound like you know what you're talking about. You say, yeah, I want a DAO revolver, man. Okay. But let me just say, let's look at DA. Just say you want a DA. Don't say DAO, because double action only means what happened there is for most carry situations, they bob the hammer off so that it doesn't get snagged in your pocket or your holster. This tang sticking out tends to snag on things. A double action revolver does not have a hammer spur. Therefore, it's a non-snag item, so you pull it out and you have to pull the trigger hard. I'd say just look for a double action revolver. If you're going to carry on your person, then you're going to want to go to a lightweight aluminum double action revolver. Far less weight, be smaller in size, and I would say go down to 38 for that. Because what happens when you want to carry personally is that most people get something that's too heavy, and if it's too heavy, it's too uncomfortable, they can't hide it on their person well enough, and they start making excuses not to carry it. And the time that you make an excuse where you say, oh, it's only a block over to the store, I'm not going to take it, that's the day you need it. I guarantee it, it'll happen. On the semi-automatic, we'll go through this, but I just wanted to really say for your home defense, the 20 or 12 gauge pup shotgun with a T6 adjustable stock, I'll put adjustable here so that it helps explain that. It's hard for me to sometimes put myself in your position. If there's something that you're not catching, just say something because we'll just talk about it. So double action will have a hammer. Double action only will have no hammer. Okay, for defending your home, again, you have this extremely wide range of shells. Look for those low recoil, low penetrating rounds. If you have some firearm experience,
Dave,
yes?
could you give us an estimate of what the cost?
I have a whole section on costs, and we'll go through it, because there's a lot of strategy on pricing of firearms. On a semi-automatic, if you have some expertise with firearm, the advantages of a semi-automatic are twofold. Higher capacity, more rounds. That holds 6. A lot of revolvers hold 5. This holds 14 rounds of 45 ACP. And it'll get shots off quicker. It automatically reloads itself. You always have to pull the trigger to actuate it, to fire it. It has a lot of safety features. And a lot of times on these types of firearms, you have rails where you can have things like this. See these little laser? I'm telling you what, this is a great psychological tool. They look down, they see that laser on them, they'll run off. Where if you're just sitting there holding a gun, they'll just laugh at you. Oh, I ain't gonna be afraid of that. But they see the laser on them and they leave. It happens every time. This is also a great tool in the dark so that you don't have to see the sights. You know where the bullet's gonna be. A laser like this should be sighted in at no more than 25 yards. Okay, you can have lights on here where this laser sits. I have combinations that also have lights that you can turn on, and some of the lights have they strobe to where the person becomes disorientated, and you can induce epileptic seizures off some of the lights. They're at those frequencies on purpose. Okay, so you have higher capacity, quicker, able to produce more rounds quickly, but it's a more complicated mechanism mechanically. This will not jam. This will not jam. This takes very little maintenance. It's easy to clean. This will jam. This takes a lot of maintenance. It is difficult to clean. So, and this is the best semi-automatic made in the world by far right now. It's an XD Springfield Armory extreme duty pistol. These pistols have been tested multiple times to 50,000 rounds with no failure to feed, fire, and extract the empty cartridge. And the reason they stopped at 50,000 is because no one had that much ammunition with them. No one believed that you could run 50 cases of 1,000 rounds each ammunition to it with no maintenance, no lubrication of any type, without failure. The firearm got so hot on numerous occasions that they had to put the firearm in a vise and use a stick to actuate the trigger because it was too hot to touch. This is amazing. This is a great investment if you want to go semi-auto. Do not buy. There are absolutely great firearms out there in semi-autos, such as Sig Sauer, H&K, F&H. Great firearms, accurate, very well made, good workmanship, good materials. Do not buy them. You break one part on it and you cannot get a part. Of course, they don't break often, but those big brand name expensive guns, you cannot get parts for them. This firearm is a copy of a Glock, but it has fixed the basic problems. Glock has several engineering design malfunctions that were basic to its inherited its design. This fixed them. This is more ergonomic. This is a fabulous firearm. This is a Springfield Armory Extreme Duty, which is an XD, and it does come in 9mm. It comes in 40 Smith & Wesson, and it comes in 45 ACP. And personally, if you want to go out and shoot and have fun, 9mm, the inexpensive ammo, but you can make someone extremely angry by shooting them with 9mm. You shoot them with 45 and it's done. One shot, it's done. But you should do double tap. Now, what I want to move into here is we've talked about handguns. I wish to, we've talked about some of the let's talk about cartridges before we get off of those. For practice, ammo, shoot FMJs, full metal jackets. They're generally the cheapest kind. For defense, shoot hollow points and get the best quality it is. These are expensive. You will pay more for 20 of these than you will for 50 of those. And it is one of the adages here. The more you spend on this, I guarantee you, you're going to get better ammo. Expensive hollow point ammunition is exceedingly well made to great tolerances, and always test fire a few rounds to make sure that the hollow point will load in your semi-auto if you're going to use it. In the revolver, we know it's going to load. And one of the reasons why I wish that you would stick with the revolver for defense, looking down the road, if everything goes bad and it's down for a long time, you have to have very premium ammunition to make the semi-auto run. Sometimes they're finicky. They need different types of ammo. They won't eat all types. This will shoot every round ever made. You can take the empty hulls, the cartridges, once the bullet's been shot out of it, and you can home make on your own with a little bit of instruction, basic powders that will cause this to fire because you are providing all the mechanical energy necessary to actuate it. Where here, you're using chemical energy from the shell to run the semi-automatic mechanism. You can make some pretty crude homemade ammunition to make this work. Same thing with a pump shotgun. You can make some super crude shot shells, and they're going to work where they're not going to run a semi-auto. And you always want to have a few more than just an over-under or side-by-side. I love my side-by-side, but when it comes to what we're talking about, you got to have 7 or 8 shells. So that's what we're talking about, shells. Shot shells, there's a huge variety of them. For defense, you're going to want double-aught buck. It's going to be 0.0 buck. Even triple-aught buck is acceptable. I have shells that I sell that are low recoil that have 15 pellets of double-aught buck. That is the equivalent of shooting 15 .308 bullets at one shot down one barrel. That is effectiveness. You know, we're talking exceedingly great effectiveness. For practice, you just want shot shells. You want to go in there and say, hey, I want some target loads. And they have target loads, which are very cheap. Generally, you're going to find them around $6 or $7 a box. And you're going to pay $5 for 5 shells on the defensive loads. You're going to pay $1 a shell for these. These, you're going to get 25 of them for $6, $7. Big diff. Okay, we'll talk about that. Now I want to talk about some Centerfire rifles and some Rimfire rifles. Every home For long term, this is for immediate defense, but if you're looking out and you're thinking you're going to stay in your home or in an area for a long time, you should have a 22 long rifle. That's the ammunition rifle. The ammunition has the word LR, which means long rifle, in it. Every time you go to Walmart, you want to buy a brick of this ammunition. It's 500 rounds for $9 to $15. Every time you go, buy some of this. Buy a few boxes of this practice stuff, because not only is this good for small game, you can, if you had to leave the situation that you're in and choose one firearm to take with you, you take the 22 long rifle, because you can carry 500 rounds in one pocket. Or you couldn't carry 500 rounds of anything else. You'll still be able to carry water and food and other supplies if you have the 22 rifle. If you have a whole bunch of these shells saved up, this is absolutely fabulous trading stock. It is worth more than gold and silver and food and everything. You will find that if things go terribly wrong very quickly, that this is what's going to happen. The very first item of trade is going to be ammunition. Ammunition. The second item of trade is going to be antibiotics. The third item of trade is going to be portable fuels, such as canned gasoline, small cylinders of propane, diesel, kerosene. The next item of trade is going to be called portable foods. This is stuff that will survive weather. This was stuff that's in cans, bottles, buckets that you can get wet, throw around, leave out, not have to be frozen, isn't going to be totally derogated by getting hot. This stuff's going to have value. This is the one that I really hope you're not shocked by, but this is great trading material. Alcohol and tobacco. People, when your life is in a miserable place, a bit of comfort from this, you're willing to trade a lot for. And if you have the supply of it, and you trade it out, and you don't ever say you have a whole lot of any of this. If you're going to go out and you're going to go trading, you have maybe one box of 22 in your pocket and a couple of loose rounds, and you pull it out and you say, well, I have this. You don't say, oh, I got 50,000 rounds in the garage and ammo cans, which is something else I wanted to touch on real quick. These ammo cans, you're storing this stuff in. Get these hermetically sealed. Got a big rubber O-ring in them. They're tough. They're also Faraday boxes. If you have electronics, you can put them in them. Put some cardboard or foam around it, and your electronics are going to survive an EMP, even a very close one in that. I'm saying straight up, get lots and lots and lots of ammunition. And not even in the calibers you have. Get stuff that you can trade, because there's a wide variety of ammunition. You see something on sale, snag it. So let's move on up. In this, you understand the difference between rimfire and centerfire? Okay, a 22 is a rimfire. If we're looking at the base of a shell, the firing pin comes out and is generally square and strikes it on the rim and compresses it, and there's some chemical in there that basically is unstable when it's compressed, and it causes a spark that goes into the rest of the shell to ignite the powder to produce gas to push the projectile out. This is rimfire. The ammunition is very small, very lightweight. The other ammunition we're going to talk about is centerfire. It has a primer, a separate primer that has been pressed into a hole, And on Centerfire, you generally have a much more larger cartridge, and you have a much more powerful cartridge. So most of the ammunition we're talking about, shotguns, the Centerfire, all this revolver ammo, Centerfire, do not let the guys at the gun store talk you into 17 HMR and stuff like that. It's great round, it's great for varmints, but there's far more 22 around and far more 22 rifles for trading with. And so I want you to understand this one thing, and then we're going to really get into guns. If you don't understand how firearms work, what you have is on this Rimfire, it has a rim. The firing pin comes out and strikes right here and compresses some chemicals right here. These chemicals are unstable. They produce a shock wave. Inside of the cartridge are little granules of nitrocellulose. It's not gunpowder. This is called smokeless powder. It is tiny microscopic bits of paper with nitroglycerin condensed onto it. And as this shock wave is produced and travels through this, it converts that solid into a gas. As the gas pressure expands, this projectile is pushed forward away from the cartridge. As the gas pressure grows, it overcomes this crimp and it shoots this projectile down the barrel. You've heard the term rifling probably. A French guy back in the 1800s discovered if you put a groove in your barrel and you caused the bullet to spin, it would help stabilize it in flight and make it much more accurate. That's why if you want to shoot more longer distances accurately, you get a longer barrel than this. This is for the home. On the Centerfire cartridge, it's basically the same thing, except there's no rim. It's a rimless cartridge. It'll have a divot here. And then it'll have a primer, a separate primer that's much more powerful. It still does the same thing. When it's struck in the center by a firing pin out of the bolt, it causes a detonation which spews high energy sparks and shock wave and pieces of the primer cap into the nitrocellulose, which then ignites and builds powder and shoots out. Okay, the reason I'm showing you this is to try to get you to understand that this component, this cartridge, this casing and this bullet, and this primer, these separate components, you have to keep them dry. Moisture can get in right through here where this is pressed in, and this is just pulled back into the neck and tightly crimped. Moisture can get in right here around the neck. Oil can get in there. You want to keep your cartridges dry. You want to keep them fairly stable in temperatures for longevity. If you get this stuff too hot, it's actually, getting it real cold isn't such a bad thing, but it's the heat that kills cartridges. What happens is the nitrocellulose, the nitroglycerin, may separate some from the cellulose, and when you go to shoot it, it generates gas too quick, and it'll blow your gun up. So high temperatures are bad, low temperatures, stable temperature is very good. A basement is a great place for these. All right, so let's go on to a long gun, and I want to show you some different long guns. One of the things that is super handy to have is an AK-47. And you know our president has said that we shouldn't have these, and only the military should have these. This is a fabulous firearm. This, if you have no training, is what you should be running. This has the ability to run and work effectively in mud, rust, dry, dirt, frozen, extreme temperatures of any type. You can pour dirt into this and it'll still fire. You can stick it under water and shoot it. It will shoot. This is absolutely essential if you're going to project force with untrained people. And you want something that you don't have to carry special tools to work on it with. you want something that's going to work effectively. You can get this in different calibers. You can get this in 5.45 caliber, which is AK-74. You can get it in AK-47 caliber, which is the most common, which is 7.62 by 39. You can get this actually chambered in 223, which is 5.56 in the metric system. So you could run common ammos. Watch your chambering. It is incredibly simple. They are medium priced. They issue these to children, to grade school children, and they're effective firearms with them. I could teach you everything you need to know about one of these in a few minutes, which we'll go through sometime in one of these sessions if we have time. An AK-47. That is a semi-automatic firearm, and it will fire in the collapsed position. So this is still good in a tight place. This particular one here, some of them have stocks that come in this way, some have stocks that fold under, some have standard stocks that are like the T6 that's adjustable. So this will fire in this position. This is a 20-round mag. I've got 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, and 75-round magazines for these. This will take down a whole street. It'll give you good suppressive fire. It is a fabulous, fabulously designed, functional fire. It is a Centerfire cartridge. I want to show you a carbine because a lot of you people aren't familiar with the different types of firearms. This is a Ruger Mini 14. This came from a police department. They carried this as a patrol firearm in the back of their car for many years. This is a scaled down M14. The M14 shoots a NATO 308 round. This shoots a 223 round, same as the AR-15. It shoots a very common caliber. 223 is probably another caliber that you want to look into because the police and the military have it. So there's a supply of ammunition governmentally available for that. And then we're going to talk about some other Centerfire cartridges. This is lightweight. It can have high capacity magazines. It's incredibly easy to operate. And it's extremely tough. This firearm will eat a wide variety of ammunition and won't be finicky like most AR-15s will, which are current military issue. This is tough, it's easy to clean, and it will work under adverse conditions. And the price is half the price of an AR. Half the price. This is easily transportable. I suggest that you have carbines. Now, a carbine means that it's around a 16-inch or shorter barrel. So for right now, the way the laws are, that you must have on a rifle, you must have a minimum of a 16-inch barrel and 26 inches in length overall to be a rifle. If you have a barrel shorter than 16 inches, you have to go through a special tax. It's $200, called a short barreled rifle tax. So you don't want to do that. It's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of expense. So on your shotguns, you want to have a minimum of 18 inches of barrel and 26 inches of overall length in its shortest configuration, like that little Mossberg we were talking about. It barely is legal by that much. And you want it to be legal by at least a half an inch so they don't argue with you which side of the line to read the tape measure on. You always want a half inch of legality. Because that way they can't just say, hey, that looks like 18 or 16 to me. And they go, no, it's 18. Okay, the bottom line there is that is an open sight rifle. Here is another Mini 14. It is also in 223. These also can be chambered in the AK caliber, 7.62 by 39. This particular one has a scope mount. And it has a very, very nice tactical rubber armored military grade scope. It's very light. It didn't add much to it, maybe a pound at the most. But one of the good functions of this is that you can still see the sights underneath this and use your iron sights for up close. So this, if you're not experienced, this is probably everything from 100 yards closer, looking through your iron sights. You want to shoot a little bit further, then you want to move up to your magnifying optic. This is a variable power from 3 to 9. It's fully coated. It has a lit reticle. That means so it has crosshairs in it, and these crosshairs have mil dots on them. That means they have some tick marks here. These are necessary if you're a shooter so that you can gauge for wind. If you know the wind is blowing from the left, you know your bullet's going to be pushed left, so you might want to aim a little bit. Your bullet's going to be pushed to the right, sorry. You need to aim a little bit to the left so you can come over and use this crosshair in heavy wind. And it'll compensate for that. This also has a bullet drop compensator in it. Right up here on the top, and it's calibrated for 223. It will move the crosshairs up and down, clear up to 500 yards, which is probably the maximum effective range of 223. Most people will say 600, but I'll say 500 because at 600, it's in the dirt with no velocity. This is a fabulous option. This scope's about $150. The mounts mounted up is another $75, $80. It's a pretty nice mount. It can be removed easily and quickly with no tools. The AK can be taken down, no tools. This firearm can be taken down, no tools, no specialty bench armor tools. If something happened, this optic got mashed or crashed, zip this off, you still have your open sights that are very tough and protected. One of the things that you want to think about with optics is that the thing that I didn't say here about the lit reticle is that if it's night or if you're shooting into a background where the background is dark and the crosshairs are dark, this has the ability where there's a switch on it that you turn it and it makes the crosshairs light up red or green. So there's a great contrast. It's a lit reticle. It's a very good feature, but the optic will still work without the battery. You don't have to have the battery in it, it's only to light the reticle. So a battery in that will last 40 to 50 hours of operation. I highly suggest it if you don't have a bunch of experience. We'll talk about pricing of that stuff. One of the reasons I brought this is a bolt action rifle. Yuck, it's all got cosmoline on it. Need a towel. Anyway, this is a World War II Mosin Nagant 9130, currently available in the United States. It is a bolt action. That means you personally move this to put every round in and out. It'll hold 5 rounds. It has a 30-inch barrel. This is an effective firearm to 1,200 meters. It is tough. You can't hurt it. You can't break it. It comes with a big old bayonet here that goes on the end of it. It comes with a brand new sling, tools, everything you need's all in it. I sell this firearm, which is factory condition new. It is old, this is made in the 40s, but it's been re-arsenaled with 200 rounds of ammunition for $200. It's $199 just to start you while you do it. This is tough. If you are going to go out hunting and you wanted something that is going to hunt and shoot at a long range, you can't do better than this. You could spend thousands of dollars and not have a firearm as effective as this. This is fabulous. If you have a neighborhood and you got a couple of cases of these and you say, okay, Tom, I'm giving you one, Roy, I'm giving you one, go down and stand at the head of the street. With that bayonet on the end of it, it looks pretty tough, and you act like you know what you're doing. And the people go to the next neighborhood. They don't come to your neighborhood. They don't come to your house. This doesn't jam. Go ahead. This is 7.62 by 54R. This is more powerful than a 30-06. This is more powerful than a 308. This is a little bit less powerful than a 300 Winchester Magnum. This is a powerful firearm. Mosin Nagant, 9130. Mosin Nagant, MN 9130. I'll write it down up here. So there are other firearms But the reason I say this particular one is because right now you can buy ammunition for it dirt cheap. And you should buy enough for what you think you're going to need for the end days. An 880 round case ammunition of that's less than $300. And it comes in 2 tins of 440 that are sealed inside of a wooden crate. It is a great investment, and it's not something that you're going to feel bad about if you loan it to somebody and it gets scratched or it doesn't come back or whatever. This is another AK-47. This is a PAP. This is brand new, made in Yugoslavia. It's probably one of the toughest AKs ever made by mankind. There's another version that has an underfolding stock. I, again, highly recommend it. This particular one has open sights. It has a rail on it, so you can put optics on it. You can take and beat fence posts into the ground with this, and you can't hurt it. It's exceedingly simple. I'll probably take that other one apart if we have a couple of minutes here, or maybe in another session I'll take one apart and go through it with you. Totally simple. If you have an AR, make sure that you have someone who's qualified to teach you how to maintain it. You can go down and spend $1,500, $1,000 to $1,500 for a new AR. Do not spend less than $900 on an AR because you're not getting a good quality firearm. You have to learn a lot to make it function. A lot. You have to have special tools. It's probably the worst weapons platform available on the planet, but a lot of people have trained with it, and they're familiar with it, and it's popular with guys that like to tinker. Now this is probably the premier .308 in the world right now. This particular model is a Setme. This is off the H&K designs of the 91 and the G3 were all built off of this design. This has 3 moving parts. I can teach you how to service this rifle in 2 minutes. You cannot take it apart wrong. You can't put it together wrong. This is an auto loader, a semi-auto. Every time you pull the trigger, a .308 round goes downrange. This is 1,000 yards effective firearm. It also has a bayonet, which is a great psychological tool. It has 20 round and 30 round magazines that load right here. It articulates here for the bolt and a bolt lock. This puppy, this has a really nice open sight with 4 ranges. It's hard to see, but there's a sight here that you can rotate 4 times, and it will compensate for bullet drop for your open eye, your iron sights, for 4 different ranges, clear out to about 500 meters. We put an optic on this on purpose. This is a rubbered armored military scope. It does have a lit reticle. It has 3 to 9. This puppy is covered with rubber. It is tough. It's an 800 series scope. It's very inexpensive. It's not pretty like a hunting scope on purpose. It's built for a totally different job. This firearm, different firearms, obviously, intuitively, you would think that you would know that the smaller the caliber, the closer the effective range. The larger the caliber, the more effective range you're gaining. And that's something you have to think about, is how much area you're going to defend. I'll have a session where we'll go through defensive strategies of how to choose which firearm and how to build defensive rings and how to think of how to defend an area. So these things are a little more expensive, and if you really want to, and what I'm trying to say is that if you have some experience with firearms, it's a lot nicer and safer for you and your community to keep them further away from you than letting them get up to 7 or 10 feet away. So if they have a vehicle, or you're a good shot, you want to scare them and you shoot a stop sign right beside their head at 1,000 yards, they're going to go to a different place because they can't even see you. They didn't even hear it. They didn't even hear the shot at 1,000 yards before it punched a hole in the stop sign beside them. And if they have a vehicle, you could stop the vehicle a long ways away with it. This is the Cadillac. This It's what the world championship sniper teams in the world have won for the last 4 years. I have furnished the firearms for the last 4 sniper champions. They're personal friends of mine. I have the bolt out of this. This is a 308 Savage 10 FCPHS. It has a bull barrel. It's button rifled, air gauged. It has a whole lot of features that I could go through. It's aluminum pillar bedded, has an HS precision stock. It has an adjustable trigger. We'll put a bipod on one of these studs and lay down with it with a nice optic. You could head shoot at 1,200 yards with this, with 308 ammo. Of course, that's a pretty good hand load, but even with factory ammo, you're going to get incredible shots at 800 and 900 yards with this. It does have a detachable magazine, so you could load and reload quickly. It has a great big, huge, oversized bolt. This is actually the cost of a fairly decent hunting rifle. We furnish this to Homeland Security, police departments, special weapons teams, with no modifications other than they generally use their own hand loads. This, you put a nice optic on top of this, you can keep them a long ways away. Now, we're running down on time, and I want to show you something because we're talking about everything from about $130, and there's a step up the way, all the way at a firearm for every price range, and it's just like cars, they have different purposes. You have a little car that's economical, that's your 22, to run around in. You have your 4-wheel drive, that's your 308, sometimes get rough. And then, when you really want to do something, you move up to the big boys. This is $12,500. This is military issue. It is legal for you to purchase it, if you have the money, of course. This is called a Barrett M82. This shoots 50 caliber ammunition, 50 caliber BMG ammunition. And that's why you generally see a guy that is issued one of these, he generally has another guy with him called a spotter, because this is pretty heavy. That's why it has a carry handle on it. This is the magazine that holds the cartridges. It only holds 10. Oh, I gotta get that up in there. So, you put 10 rounds into it. You pull it once, you have a Night Force scope. This is a $3,000 scope. It has all kinds of compensations. It is all sighted in, ready to go. You put this puppy down, and you can stop a dump truck at 2.5 miles with this. A very good person, the current kill record for this firearm is 2.58 miles south of Baghdad, on a highway at a 130-degree day. Most of the current snipers are hitting between 1,000 and 2,000 yards with this. Head shooting, tearing people. This will tear a person in half, clear in half. This, with an AP round, will stop anything on the highway, anything, semi, no matter what. I don't know how I know this, but I know it'll shoot through 3 dump trucks parked side by side. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that you got to think about several things. What are you going to defend? Are you going to defend your house? Are you going to defend your neighborhood? Do you think you're going to need to translocate, relocate? Are you going to need to go somewhere else? Are you going to need to have a backup place to go to? You're not going to be able to carry everything. I suggest that something you think about is called caching. You go out and you put some products and supplies away in different places in different directions so that you can go different directions, not have to carry everything, because you may have to be on foot. You can't carry a year's worth of food. You can't carry stuff like this. This is made for young guys in big groups. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing this kind of stuff. Now, there's a lot more we could go over about all this. And one of the things that I hope you realize is that you're going to need some training. If you're not familiar with firearms, there are basic handgun courses. We are out of time, but I would suggest that we have a book that you can order for $4.95 plus $1.99 shipping and handling that will go over everything I covered today in greater detail. So basically, you're out $7. You can order this from us. It's called Choosing Your Weapon, and it's made by a prophet up in Montana named Lloyd Phillips, a good guy. I wrote a review for it. I helped him compile the book. It's a resource you should have. So we're out of time. Do you want any time for questions and answers? Or
What's the name of that book again?
Choosing Your Firearm. It's Choosing Your Weapon. Choosing Your Weapon. See, for me, it's a firearm until you use it on somebody, and then it's a weapon. It's just like a rock is a rock. You pick it up and you throw it at somebody, then it's a weapon. So it's a difference of how you perceive things.